All right, we're good to go. Ben, I got
What's
you
up?
on.
About
Dude,
time, right?
yes, bro. Long time coming. Dude, I've been
I
on
kept canceling on
hiatus.
you.
I've been in the sunken place. I've been MIA for most of 2021, but I'm back. But I got essentially my best friend to be on here, and we went to college together. So Ben, I've known you since right out of me leaving high school, 2012, straight to North Carolina, and I met you. And
That's it.
so, uh, geez, man, almost 10 years later, we still keep up with each other. So it's
That's
just
it.
we've just seen each other change over these years, and I think you were a great person to interview.
Oh,
But
very kind.
oh damn, man. So take me back. Um, so it's 2012. I go to Southeastern, you go to Southeastern. Uh, did you know you wanted to go to Southeastern back then?
Yeah, it's so funny. Like looking back on that right now, of just where college took me. I had a high school English teacher who I loved and adored, and I kind of vicariously just kind of keep up with him every now and then. But I want to be an English teacher. I was like, I think I want to be a teacher of some sort. And then, but I had this really cool youth pastor as well, and I was like, man, I like what he does. I always seem to be people centric and enjoyed hearing people's stories.
Mm.
And I had one of our like lead pastors at this church I went to said, well, you can go check out Toccoa Falls, which was a church I heard at like a Christian camp.
Yeah.
Went and toured there. I hated it. I was like, I cannot live
Yo,
out in
the
Toccoa, Georgia.
waterfalls, bro. What do you mean?
It was there was just nothing to do. And I mean, when we came into Wake Forest, there was nothing to do yet. But like in Toccoa, there was literally no. I was like, there's nothing I'm gonna do out here. And then the pastor told me, he's like, man, Southeastern has a college, and if you're gonna go into ministry, like this would be the place to go. And yeah, I applied, and that was it. And then yeah, I got in, and I mean, everyone gets in, so but yeah, it was kind of like a late thing though. Like I got accepted to all these other colleges, but then I just kind of ministry was always kind of on the back burner, and I was like, I think I just want to do it. I think I'll be disappointed if I don't. And yeah, just ended up at Southeastern. So
Okay, and were your parents religious? Like, did they push you into that as well?
yeah, I mean, I grew up in kind of just this old little Baptist church. I was really got to know the pastor there, and his name was Pastor Charles. He's still a pastor today. I don't know how old he is, but he's still in the ministry. It's kind of crazy. We saw him like probably less than 10 years ago, I guess, but he's still going. And so yeah, they were religious, and they were Christians, and we just moved to this other Baptist church just right down the street because it was a little bit bigger and they had more of a youth ministry. The church I grew up in was essentially kind of crumbling, just with pastor changes and all the silly Baptist stuff you think about. That church was going through, like the carpet change.
Carpets, yeah.
It really was that, and that's what's kind of crazy. It really was that. So yeah.
All right, dude. So take me back. See, the thing is, when I close my eyes and I think of 2012, I think of just this gang of guys, me, you, Luke, Michael, Micah, like all these old names, just thugging it out, trying to figure out what's going on, how we're gonna do it. And I think of you with your long hair, way back.
Yes.
Yes. But dude, okay, so the thing is, me and you really connected over an early experience our freshman year, and it was going to the all guys like dean of students Leaderbach male meeting that we had to go to.
Yeah.
Where, help me remember, it was during orientation, and
yeah, it was like the first week or two.
Yeah. First week is like, all right, no ladies, all the guys have to come to. And from what I remember, this is when it started getting strange. Did you take that to be a red flag back then? Like, did you know that this would turn into something later?
I don't know. Like, I remember it being kind of weird, but I was like, well, this is just kind of how Southeastern kind of rolls. And I guess I can get that. I just didn't have the categories for it. I don't even know if I have the categories for it now, but, to even like put my thumb on that. Like, I understand it was like an issue, or that like this guys meeting was just kind of like this tradition. I don't know if they still do it today. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I just remember it being like, okay, well, they really care about this one area, and I get that. And during, like, I don't know, evangelicals time, it kind of seemed like that was the big issue that every pastor would always just talk about, was just male purity. And it was just a very big deal. So as a red flag, maybe not, because I just didn't know. And that's kind of like my part at Southeastern was, I feel like when I came into Southeastern, I was just like, I didn't know half of what people talked about. So everything that a lot of people nerded out about and were very in tune with, I didn't even understand. Like the first year was such a learning curve for me to even know to hold a conversation with anyone. Cause I'm like, they're talking about all these random evangelical people. I have no idea what's going on. I didn't have an idea.
Yeah, bro. When they start talking about, obviously it was like Calvinism stuff, but when you start talking about like Huss and you start like trying to drop names, like, oh, bro, I got this Spurgeon book, bro, and you pull out the tome, what you on right now?
Yeah. So whenever it's just all about this, like maybe like male purity and what or have you, I didn't have. I mean, I understood what that meant, but like I didn't have the books about it. I didn't know about Paul Washer. I mean, I didn't know about all these, I guess, evangelicals bigwigs that I honestly just didn't, I don't know, really didn't care, I don't think, at that time.
Yeah.
So,
well, I bring it up because to me, that's when I started to feel the pressure, or at least expectation with like the college students, the undergrad, because then it kind of set in that we were supposed to obviously be pure. If we had any kind of pornography problem or we think we're gonna have sex, it was you had to like go tell the dean essentially, or you be suspended. So there became this fear of like, yo, like I'm 18, I'm 19. Damn, I didn't know it was this serious, but I guess it is. But then it started later be like, we couldn't play video games, or at least it was looked down upon. We were encouraged to get a full-time job, start making that money, and it was stop messing around. You need to date with intention. That's huge. That's big, and that's when I started to feel of just a bunch of 18-year-olds trying to figure out like, okay, we're trying to be the best Christians, or I could be a pastor, could be going to ministry. Let's try to take ourselves seriously. Did you think we were trying to grow up too fast back then? Because that was a big part of the culture that we were part of.
It's really good. I think it's a really good question. And a lot, I know we've reflected on kind of in private, but like, I think just in general, whenever I talk with my wife or various people, because some of my friends were in the graduate program at Southeastern at the time. So there was this like growing up that I did feel that pressure. I guess if I had a category to put it in, I did feel like I had to grow up. And I don't know necessarily like I couldn't fail, but like I felt like I was jeopardizing a lot of potentially, my college education, if what have you happen. But, the full-time job thing is very real. I remember that way and on me more heavily than all the other stuff, because this guy is no longer there at Southeastern. And I think it's a good thing he's not. But he essentially, I remember it was kind of like that same like guys meeting, but it was for financial aid. So they brought all of the new students in, and I remember my parents were with me, and and he basically talked about how bad debt was. And
okay, I
it
think
was
I remember
like,
this.
do you remember this?
I think a little bit.
Like, I don't know who he was. I never remember his name. I was really intimidated by him. I remember, I was 17. I moved in and I turned 18. I don't know what loans are. My parents don't. I'm the first one to go to a 4-year institution. So we're all figuring this out together. And I just remember feeling this tremendous weight that I'm in debt then I am doing something wrong, because I already get half off my tuition.
Yeah.
But if I can't come up with, $5,000 to do it, then I'm in the wrong. I'm doing something bad. My parents don't steward their finances. Oh, well, I must go work at Chick-fil-A or wherever to get a job. And being 18 at that time, I don't know, for me, since I only lived 2 hours away, I felt I didn't want to get a job, but I wanted to travel back home. I still had that so I couldn't get a job. So I did have kind of that guilt, I would say. But yeah, I did feel like I had to grow up, because by the second year, it was like, my sophomore year, it was a job or bust. I said, there's just no way. There's no other way around it. So yeah, there was this pressure to grow up. I didn't really there's not that traditional college experience, which I feel like is there at the school now, potentially.
I think it's a lot different feel of people I talk to who still go there, are still around it. It's changed a little bit. I mean, kind of post-COVID and all that kind of stuff. But looking back, man, I was just like, bro, it was so big to just like, if you dated someone, bro, you like, people would just come up to you and be like, bro, are you playing games? And this was just like normal, or just like, pat on the back, like, yo, you did the right thing, bro. Like, just checking him and seeing his intentions. Or like, bro, if you're dating her, like, you got to get a job. And these would be like just random dudes just like coming up to you like, yo, like, how are you? Like, yeah, I'm in her class, bro. And what was crazy, kind of like, because now you just like, this guy's just a bozo. But this culture was fine and accepted and celebrated. It's like you're holding your brother accountable.
Yeah.
And dude, that was just like way too much. But
yeah, that was definitely the student culture. Like, that's definitely was, like, it was definitely I think with our class, I know a lot's changed, now, but I would say there was this, if you had a friend that was a girl, you would potentially be asked, like, all right, do you like her? Like the idea of having a friend as a girl, I know how weird that sounds now, but like, you could maybe, but like, it wouldn't be uncommon to get asked by someone close to you if you wanted to date them and potentially marry them, and what your plans were. So to kind of go back to growing up, there is this kind of like ducks in a row. Like, you have to have it all planned out before you actually, because it's such a a monumental thing, which like marriage is, of course, or dating. I mean, if you date seriously, but I feel like it was heightened. I feel like it was way more serious than I think they made it way more serious than what it needed to be.
Yeah, there was definitely like no sense of like casual dating. Like, that's a sin, bro. You can't.
Yeah, like it was like, yeah, it definitely was. Don't take it too far. Don't lead them down the wrong road. And I just think it was just kind of I don't know. I just think it was a miseducation of like, you can casually date someone. You can date someone without that. I mean, I met my now wife kind of on the mentality of like, I want to date her, I want to marry her type of thing. So I can't really be a hypocrite in that sense, but there was that pressure. I'll say that much.
Okay. Now, just going back to freshman year, do you remember when we were in small group and we were in the trailer with like 18 other people? Like, our small group was essentially like a church. And we had, so what did you think about accountability, like the first couple rounds we had? Because this was new to me. I didn't go to church before, but for you, this seemed to be like a newer experience for all of us, doing accountability with older people.
Yeah, that was new. I'll say that was very new. Like, that was the idea of doing church or having small group where you got like super personal so quickly was very, very, very new to me. And I don't know if I don't necessarily open up that well, or don't feel like always that comfortable doing that. So that was kind of like a shock, because the guys who were leading our small group, the good guys, it was just kind of like assumed, I guess. And that was just kind of most of my first year experience, was everything was assumed, except me and you were like, what's going on here? Like, what's going on here? This is different. This is different.
Well,
So.
it's because I had a 40-year-old white guy ask me what kind of porn I was looking at. Because I told him, like, yeah, man, like I looked at porn on Friday. And he's like, oh, what kind of stuff you watching?
Yeah, I was not there for that one.
I was
say that.
like,
I don't know if I was.
yo, but I'm looking around. I'm like, yo, there's people in here. Like, what are we like? Just in chairs, like it's AA. We're looking at each other, and he's like, yo, so what category are you watching?
Yeah, that.
And I was like, yo, all right, so yo, I'm done. I said, yo, if my parents knew what they sent me off to, I'm like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, that was odd. I remember you telling me that because I don't know if we were in two different groups because I think our group split up. Like since our small group was literally like a church, it was like we split up into two different bigger groups. Because I don't think I was there.
Because it was when it was still big. This was when it was still big, and it was like 20 people. And because accountability would take damn 2.5 hours to do.
Dude, yeah, your Wednesday nights it was you went to small group at like 6 and you were done at like 9:30 or 10. Bro. Like it was a lot.
And it was, well, yeah, I had a lot of people had a big problem with just how much time it took. Not only you ask me these invasive questions, it was like, yo, I can't do this 6 to 9. I had, D group through the school for an hour. I had 2 classes today.
Yeah.
And I still got to do church stuff. And it's like, and I go to work.
Yeah.
But it was so normal to like, yo, you got to be doing everything. Yeah. So I feel like as soon as you jump in, it's just crunch time. And you got to do this, do that, do this. Dude, do not be the person that doesn't show up to church. Because bro, it's just, if I want to like not go or just have some time to myself, it was like, dude, people are out there watching you or like talking about it. Like that was the crazy thing.
Yeah, I remember. Oh geez, I just remember thinking like, I remember coming back to the question of, and I think after my time at Southeastern, but definitely during, I was like, how much do you actually share with someone? And I think that's become a bigger conversation now. Like later on, is like some stuff that people go through is so personal and so, I would just say so just tangled up in their everyday life that it's so hard to unpack something in such a group setting. You know what I'm saying? So it kind of seems like one-on-one, like maybe therapy and stuff like that has become more mainstream because like in those group settings, it's hard because like for me, I was like, I don't want to talk about stuff because I don't know these people yet. This is my second week at, being away from home. I have no idea what's going on. I literally don't even, I know 4 roads and how to drive down them and like get into my dorm and not get like a ticket for where I parked. And like, we don't have a cafeteria. So I just shopped. And that was like the first time I ever shopped for myself. It's just everything was so new. So even coming into that, it was a question of like, I don't know people. I don't think I'm going to share because I just don't trust. And that was a recurring theme, I think, throughout my entire time at Southeastern was I have to trust people.
Well, for me, I bought in. I was like, sure, I'll play the game. Like, let's do it. I got the books. I got the small group book. I got the, Mr. Accountability. But then it was when you would tell something in confidence and then they would use it against you or guilt you.
Yeah.
And I was like, yo, this is not what the book said this was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like what I'm getting at, because it was like I was always scared to tell someone something and then it just be like come out on the back end. Well, it kind of feels like that. And so that was always my hesitation. And so, but yeah.
Yeah, I learned to be like, all right, well, never mind. I'm never saying anything ever again. I was like,
it made you go the opposite way. It made you just
I'm all right. Back. Yeah. He can go. Yeah. It's all right.
Yeah. I'll just white knuckle this now. So
it's between me and the Lord. It's all right.
That's it.
But dude, we became roommates.
We did.
Yeah, it was
2013
next year. No, it was later. It was later.
Yeah, it was
14.
it's like our junior year or third year or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
Dude, we became roommates. And so that's when we started spending more time together.
Mhm.
And for me, I started to take a big theological shift then. You thinking back, kind of freshman, sophomore, junior, when did you have a time or a class or a book that you read that really started changing your mind about how you were viewing Christianity and everything?
That's a super good question. I actually do remember it kind of like plain as day. And I think it was, oh man, well, Dr. Mullins got the ball rolling freshman year when I had him for basically philosophy 1. It just opened my eyes to like actually thinking. Because like that, then the ball just started rolling sophomore year, just kind of like figuring out stuff. And then I think it was when I lived with you, I'm trying to think, 2015 summer, because I remember we had a Jonathan Edwards class that spring, and I just remember having PTSD, and then I was like, I want to take a class on like, I don't know, just something super specific. And it was 2015 summer class of, it's called the Doctrine of Revelation or something like that, but it was about how God revealed himself. And I just remember our professor, I think it was Dr. Whitfield, super professor, but it was just a class that just changed. I wouldn't say changed everything, but it got me thinking like there are a lot of other theological camps outside of my own, because I was kind of in this like bubble. But then we just started reading like Orthodox people who barely believe Christianity, but like we're still theologians. I mean, it was just like super. We read women. We were reading women like theologians too, which we didn't read a lot of, the years prior. And then I think that class just really opened my eyes to the breadth and depth of, theological studies. So that was when it changed for me, and then also I think 2014 was more so, I think that's when a lot of the conversations around race and stuff were going on. Like, if I'm right, I could have my years wrong, but I took American Lit at that same time with Dr. Mullins. And that's when like, he got the ball rolling more there too, to like thinking outside the box a little bit more.
So you started to be more race conscious, and you took a class that opened you up to different theological thinking. Did this make you want to stop being evangelical, or did it lessen your hold on you with just, obviously like the issues with SBC and race, and just how like committed people are to being Baptist just because their grandpa was Baptist?
I think it was kind of both. I think it was. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying, like, did that loosen the grip a little bit? Like, do you ever think like, damn, bro, I might be Anglican at the end of this? I don't know.
Well, in the Doctrine of Revelation class, I really just like, man, am I Orthodox? Am I this? Yeah, you're just so moldable as a 20-year-old, 21-year-old or whatever. But I'll say like during 2014, taking Dr. Mullins, and I read a whole bunch of Toni Morrison then. And I read Toni Morrison in high school, but barely understood what she was saying. But like in college, I kind of started like steeping myself in like her thought. And it just, it loosened me up. I think it loosened me up to, I don't know if it's like, I didn't feel restricted like anymore, because I'm like, man, God works through literature. Man, God's working through like theology. It works through so much stuff, especially literature. Like, this is so neat how like he is intertwined in all this. Now, when I got to the theological class or Doctrine of Revelation class, I think it just depended on who I was talking to, whether or not I had hope for evangelicals or not. Because some people I would talk to were super closed-minded, or, because the issue of inerrancy was a big deal. So we just talked about the inerrancy of the scriptures, and I was a little maybe too much or too hard on this, but I think it was good. I was like, I don't think that's even real, and I'm going to start right there. I'm going to start here, and we're going to work our way out, rather than starting like presuppositionally, like with a truth that I don't know if I can prove just yet. I don't know, I don't have the information yet. And so whoever I talked to just and seemed open-minded, I was like, oh man, there's great hope. And then some people I didn't talk to, or some people who I did talk to but held a different belief, I was like, oh man, like I don't know, I can't be in an SBC if it's like this, like if it's this tribal. But yeah, so that, I don't know, it's kind of like this weird world you sit in, it's a weird like thread you have to, or needle you have to thread, like it's just so narrow.
Yeah.
I don't know how
well, the thing is, even back then, Ben, you were good for me. You were a good friend to me because you and I would both look at each other and be like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Or we were two students
we were really
asking questions like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
I was taking philosophy classes. You're taking these philosophy theology classes, and you're like, I was saying, I'm just not too sure. Like the things that I was gripping, holding on to, and I was like, I don't really think it has to be that way. But that also made my education a little bit harder because, I'm going to school for this. I'm not really sure what I want to do, but my other friends aren't taking these classes. So like they're just not having to come to grips with these realities that kind of question themselves. Did you feel that way? Like,
yeah, it was like you could go one or two ways at Southeastern. So you could go like the ministry route and you'll take your 4 philosophy classes and you'll just kind of, your last 2 years, you'll just take, expositional preaching, in which you'll read expositional pastors who, preach verse by verse, and you'll just read their books and you'll just kind of stay in that world. And then you'll become a Baptist preacher. But if you went the philosophy, theology, English route or history route, you were heading into the woods, like you had to figure it out. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's just the best way to put it. You had to figure out like what you believe because you were coming in contact with so much stuff. And when you would go and talk to someone who just did primarily a ministry track and maybe not the liberal arts side of Southeastern, you felt like you're in 2 different universes. I mean, you talk about like the nuances of scriptures and stuff like that, or philosophy or theology or, literature or whatever. And there's just no categories for it. Like you're just talking past each other. And I think that's where some of my frustration came from, as I felt like I was seeing certain things and I would try and put it out there, but it was just like you're just on 2 different things. I started, you're just in 2 different worlds. You really are.
These obscure Facebook statuses, just getting mad. It's like, bro, who's he talking to?
Yeah, it's like I feel like liberal arts people, by and large, believe that the life is just like nuance. The world is just all nuance. Like the way you view it, the way you act in it, whatever you believe is just so specific to your culture and your community. And then other people just don't view it that way. Everything's macro, everything is binary, and that's what it is. It doesn't leave room for that in some ways. But yeah, that was my friction. I'll say that. Yeah.
Well, this really came to a head when we were roommates, and we had another roommate, Tyler. I mean, that's a random name. Tyler, help me piece this together because
I remember it clearly. So
I took a class, culture and calling, and it was about vocation and calling.
I remember
and I loved that class. I learned so much, but it was about how things of this world were inherently good and redeemable. So you can become an engineer, you can become a model, a dancer. I'm into logistics, and it was as holy as someone going into ministry. And God sees them as the same way, and they're both valuable. Now, this was a new thought on campus. Other people were like, hell no, that is not the case. Our missionaries in Southeast Asia are doing God's work. And just because you went and got a scholarship for track, like this, y'all are not on the same level.
Yes.
But this class, and they gave us, it was like through like some grant, like we got these books to teach us this little small class, that this is an acceptable theological view to have. And it was so, I guess, worldview shattering for me, because we had people in the class just break down. Because there was one girl, she said she had the option to do a scholarship, an athletic scholarship, but she decided to go to, it was in California, and she decided to go to Wake Forest, North Carolina, because she thought it was God's work. And so she's like, so you're telling me that I could have went there and did that instead of, you know, going into Walmarts and just being here? And essentially they were like, yeah, like it was completely Christian view if you wanted to do that. And she just started crying.
Man, that's always makes me cry. Think about it now. It's just crazy.
So I was like, yo, if this is true, this changes so much about how I view the world, like what I'm doing here. Like, do I actually, like, I don't even know what the hell I'm doing. We had a roommate who was like, that ain't the way. I don't care what they said. I don't care they got a PhD. That ain't it. And we both connected with another professor, Anthony Bradley, in King's College in New York. And we really liked his thoughts because he was a Black man who essentially was marginalized within evangelical culture, Presbyterian and Baptist. And they hated just his views on stuff, because he would lean on sociology. He would lean on things that are not scripture. And he left a Facebook comment. I don't remember what it said on Anthony Bradley's Facebook, our roommate Tyler, and just ripped him a new one and said, people like this. Do you remember? Because he said something about his clothes. I was like,
see, I remember both of us, and I think this was the kind of divide that this is a good example of the divide. Like, our roommate he was going to do ministry. I think he's still doing it today. Like, that was the track he was going. He was very smart and honestly asked good questions, like, and wasn't afraid. So I kind of admired that. Like, he would ask the questions and just be like, okay, whatever. So it was like, it was good. He was great for that. And this was kind of that divide. Like, he's doing the ministry route and we're kind of hanging in the mystery, right? We're kind of hanging in the gray area a lot. And this professor, Dr. Anthony Bradley, who people still don't like today that much, but a lot of what he says has come true. But yeah, her roommate went in kind of, I think, with not necessarily the most nuanced view of something. And Dr. Bradley, being a well-read scholar and has done this for years on end, just laid into him over Facebook. And we told our roommate, we're like, don't post, don't do it, just we've witnessed it. Because if you go to Dr. Bradley's Twitter now, he's kind of calmed down a little bit, but it used to be the Wild West for him. I mean, he was funny.
I loved it.
Yeah, it was just like he had two pistols out at all times, taking people out. Like, if he came at him, he was battling right back. And it was not pretty. And it was like a back and forth that was it was just not the best, put it that way. It was just
I remember because he just said something about like some Sperry wearing, like I don't know, like, of course he's from the South, of course. And dude, it was so funny because it was so accurate what he was talking about.
Yeah. I mean, kudos for him for being willing to throw that comment out there after, I think it was me, you, and another person all told him, like, dude, don't do this. Don't do this. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. And he just clicked send. And I remember just it being a fist fight.
I was like, bro.
But that really was a pivotal time for both of us too. I think the faith and work thing. So.
But that really connects because you were one of the few people who agreed of like, yo, I think you could. And so I was like, oh, thank God. Like, it's not just me. Like that.
Yeah, I thought of my dad. I mean, that was the main thing I thought about. I just remember you telling me that. I remember it was kind of new for me too. And I just remember thinking of my dad. And he worked so hard. He's worked hard my whole life. You know, he was a airline mechanic. He worked, just to make ends meet at one time in high school when he got laid off. He worked, at a can plant and then is now at American Airlines again. And I remember him talking to me while I was in undergrad just about man, I feel like my work's not important. And I just remember whenever you told me about that, I was like, Dad, like, listen to this. This is insane. It was honestly like I had that golden ticket, like Willy Wonka. You know, it was just like, you found it.
Yeah,
You found it. You're so happy. But then it also had like a downside too. So it was also like, oh, okay, so like ministry is not the only reason. So what am I supposed to do now? Like, it was just kind of also that.
Yeah.
So
With kind of going back a little bit, with Anthony Bradley, he would just look through books and texts and just share these things that kind of like rocked my world. Like there was one, it was like a tweet. He was like, "Why can't I find the Great Commission in church history?" He was like, "Why can't I find it? We're at a Great Commission school. There's Great Commission studies. They were thinking about changing the name to like Great Commission Baptist." And he was like, "I can't find anything. No Catholics talk about this. No Orthodox talks about this. Like, where did this come from?" And he found it to be essentially like a marketing campaign for, I think it was like the 1800s, like one of those revivals of kind of going out and doing the Great Commission. And it was like a little pamphlet type thing.
Yeah.
And they just kind of kept it. So I was like, no. The Great Commission is what Jesus told the church that we go do. And my whole church is like based off of this. And what we do is because of Great Commission. And Bradley's like, "I hate to tell you, but this was just on a piece of paper. We just found it."
Yeah.
And there was a time when we were roommates, and a little bit after that, when going through church history and kind of picking up how majority of common theological thought is kind of pieced together, why we believe what we believe, why is this kind of so big in this culture, was just kind of pieced together through time. That began to loosen my grip of how hard and fast I was with a lot of beliefs, Christian beliefs, to the point where I was like, "Guys, I can't do this," and I left school.
Yeah,
like it was. I mean, it affected me that much. Now, for you, you didn't leave school. Why did you decide to stay, even though maybe very similarly we were kind of going through the same thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I think at one level, and this isn't the most deepest level, but I was already like 3 years deep.
Practical, like, I can't.
There's no turning back at this point. And I honestly think what kept me going was mostly like I enjoyed what I studied, but I knew there was freedom in that. And my professors allowed me to express views that weren't necessarily Southern Baptist views. And they were okay with that. And they just rolled with it. And for that, like, so grateful, because I know a lot of people didn't have that experience. And so like, I leaned into that and kind of held to that. And when those professors, which they really only taught those classes at the time, I just kind of just took them. I was like, I'm just gonna take them. Like, I'm just gonna learn. But I guess in part, I just enjoyed what I studied with theology, and knew I was gonna go to grad school or some point go to grad school. And I was like, I enjoy it. I'm just gonna ride it out. And by and large, most of the people who I took theology classes with kind of had that same loose grip in some ways. So, you always had people who were like, I believe this, and that's going to change me, no matter how many books I read that tell me the contrary. But yeah, so I think that's part of why I stuck it out. And, I just think having that, I was just thankful for that. Because I don't think if I had that, if I wasn't able to express my views well, I don't think I would have stuck it out. I had to have that, because all the other stuff was telling me, okay, like, because I remember Anthony Bradley, someone would be like, well, what do you mean? Why is it not the Great Commission? He's like, well, Jesus actually said, like, literally in the Bible, like, to love God and love your neighbor. I mean, it's the greatest commandment. That's it. And I remember him saying that multiple times, and it just kind of like, I'm like, have I missed this the whole time? Have I, like, and all the times I've read the scriptures, like, I just went to Matthew 28 and just didn't look there, or just kind of overlooked it. And so I think being able to kind of push back on certain stuff and having that freedom really kept me going. So, but like at a deeper level. So that's why I had to.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's so crazy because like it was just kind of toxic. All the stuff that we saw, but yeah, we made another side and we're still friends, and we still are able to go through a nuance of a thought, but so many of our friends couldn't do that, or especially after leaving the culture, leaving the bubble, they were just like, I don't think they can really understand what's going on in the world. Especially like you talk about QAnon and post-Trump and all this stuff. It's just like it gets such a mess.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. I don't know, blank a little bit. But yeah. I'll ask you this. Since leaving school, what do you think? Did you ever when looking back, did you think like this was a huge problem I saw, and I definitely changed my mind about this leaving school? Like I couldn't really see it because I was so close to it, but now leaving, it's like this was not good.
Yeah, I think this is kind of where at least my journey kind of, I guess, gets a little bit more murky, because I feel like undergrad was kind of just very normal. I think after leaving, the one thing that kept recurring to me, and I think this also hits on the faith and work thing that we encountered. It was I guess we talked a lot about how God would speak clearly for certain things, like and open doors is a common phrase to use, and that he makes it very clear and and provides, and God has provided for my wife and I, and so well. However, it's hard for I felt like people were very quick to name that, and so they're very like God opens doors this way, or not this way, but like God definitely opened this door for me. Like they're able to say that. And I think the one time I said that was the one time like I fell on my face the biggest. So when my wife and I moved, we moved from Wake Forest upon graduating, and worked at like a family farm, and it seemed so clear. Like,
oh yeah, the chickens.
Yeah. So we can get into that a little bit more, but we go to work at this chicken farm, which is so crazy to think about. But we go to work with my uncle and aunt, and they own a enormous poultry farm, and they told us all about the good of it, and we were on board. I did my research. I was pulling like tax maps. I was thinking, I was looking, I was asking people for counsel, this and that. I was praying. Callie and I were both praying, and it seemed the most clear thing that we could do was to move, because it was also financial. It was a seemingly financially secure, future. Because once laugh at chickens all you want, but like it ain't a bad business to get into if you can stick it out for 5-10 years. You can make a decent living. And we were vision planning, man. We had a storyboard of what we wanted to do with this thing.
Man, I didn't know about the storyboard.
Yeah, man, we were thinking about like hiring people whenever we owned the farm. We were like hiring people who couldn't get jobs, give them something to put on their resume, give them a letter of recommendation, and get them, where they want to go. Like we were envisioning so much. We get there and we absolutely hated. Like we hated it, man. So like Callie was like, I'm done. Callie, my wife, she's like, I can't do this. And I wasn't far behind her, with this, but everything seemed so clear. And I just remember looking at me like, well, God, this seemed very clear. And, this ain't it, Chief. Like, I don't know what to do. And so I think something like that, I would commonly pray for clarity and clarity and clarity, throughout undergrad. And I would kind of look for these little events that would happen in life. Like, oh my God, God's opening this door and doing all of this stuff. And then I think after that, I've just kind of been like, to all of that. Like,
Really?
yeah, just
So,
kind of like, go ahead.
So it's just not, because you were looking for the dramatic.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do. I think especially like, I remember, and some people have that experience, man, and there's no way else to explain it. Like, oh my God, someone opened a door, and they were able to go to Africa or live in India forever, or whatever. But in my experience, like praying and stuff, and I was like, man, this seems very clear. It wasn't. I don't know, like in the grand scheme of things, how it all works, but like it was that was one thing I kind of abandoned in some ways. So
yeah. But
like naming
exactly,
that job directly. Go ahead.
Yeah, what exactly did you hate about it?
The farm?
Yeah.
Well, it was my idealism got the best of me, which is so weird for my personality. I'm usually been pretty grounded,
You're very pragmatic, yeah.
Yeah, and this I think I was a little bit too idealistic. But on the one hand though, I was like, I'm done at Southeastern. I interviewed for one teaching job, realized after that interview, I in no way want to be a teacher. And there's not much for me left in Wake Forest that I want to pursue. I don't want to do any graduate work at Southeastern. I really don't know what I want to do. So I got nothing to lose. Kat and I don't have a kid. Let's roll with this. And I think what I hated mostly about it, I don't know. There's a lot wrapped up into it, but the work wasn't bad. Like I'm not averse to like hard work. Like it doesn't bother me all that much. I think more so the ethics got, I knew what type of business this was when I went into it. And I kind of bought that like, maybe I don't know if it's like a lie, but this kind of perspective that this is, ethical and stuff like that. Well, at the end of the day, I was like, this just isn't right. Like something doesn't sit with me well here. And I wasn't there 24/7, but I knew once I became like, started managing it a lot, it would be 24/7. And I don't think I understood what that meant. And because it literally is like, if something goes wrong there, you have to be there. There is no vacation until, you're in a transition season where, you're cleaning out everything and then waiting for the next, chickens to come in. And I was like, putting that perspective, I was like, I can't do this. And I couldn't do this without Callie too. I was like, we both got to be in this. If we're doing this together, because that's like my best friend and we got to roll. We ride or die. We're doing this. And yeah, man, it just wasn't, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So yeah, and it was more so the disappointment. So once I was disappointed and kind of knocked down, I was just like, man, colossal failure. And that was it. And I was just like, I'm done. I can't do this.
Okay. But you graduated with a theology degree?
Yeah, theology major and a Christian studies major. I had to stay 5 years to get that.
The double major.
Yeah, I put a lot of work into that. Yeah.
But and then you did the chicken coop.
Yeah.
And so when you realized you didn't do that, what did you do next?
Yeah, so I was told at the farm that I would need to find a job by, I think it was like I remember this clearly because I remember I was like kind of hurt. By February 10th, I need to have to find a job. And I guess it was just assumed because I have a bachelor's degree, I can just find a job, in Lexington, North Carolina. And if you know anything about North Carolina geography, you're not exactly in the you're not in Raleigh. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And so my aunt helped me get a job in healthcare, working at a front desk. And I was like, I'll take the job because it's what I have to pay. There's bills to pay, we got to pay rent, got to live. I'll take the job. So worked at healthcare. front desk. Didn't like that at all, but it paid the bills and met some interesting people and realized I'm not meant for that type of work. And then randomly applied for a job or late 2019 and worked for a hospice organization called Trellis and worked with volunteers and hospice patients and absolutely love it. So that's what I did after the farm. And that's what I'm still doing now. So.
Okay. But do you have a plan set out for like any future things or?
Yeah. So after the farm, there was a whole, like I went through, I was like, in high school, I was like, man, teaching's cool. I took an anatomy class. I absolutely loved anatomy. Did a bunch of cool stuff there. And I was like, always cared about health and stuff. So I looked at physical therapy. I interned at a physical therapy place. I was like, nah, there's more to the human body than just doing like getting old people to squat, sit down in a squat, like on a chair and stand back up. That's important. And I just kept thinking, I was like, man, there's more spiritual side. I'm theologically trained, religiously minded. So I'm just thinking all about, the human soul. And I was like, man, I could do like counseling. Like I could be, counsel people. And then I started working for hospice and realized what, some of what counselors do. And I realized I was like, man, buddy. This I don't think your gifts necessarily lie in counseling. But working at the medical clinic, which was basically internal medicine. So basically your normal primary care doctor, I got to see a lot of what those doctors did and what the nurses did. And I was like, man, like they care for people's health, and people who don't care about their own health, they try and help them live a better life, help them be sustainable at least, so they can do the things they like. And so I just thought about it a little bit more while I was working at Trellis, and I'm on a trajectory now to apply to PA schools. And so I saw what our nurse practitioners did, and I saw what our PAs did at the internal medicine clinic. And man, I just value that. And I think that's where a lot of kind of my experiences kind of led me to. And so applying to PA schools in the next, I guess, year or so, I think it would probably be the best shot, because there's a lot of stuff you got to check off, but mostly just working through the prerequisites and stuff like that right now.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy to think, essentially you have 2 degrees, but you still have to go back to school.
Yeah.
But I think, a lot of people would not be willing to do that.
Yeah. There's a lot of pride you got to check at the door. And at first I wasn't really willing to do that, because it's a very liberal arts major. I didn't take a science class at Southeastern. I didn't know about nothing about taking labs, math. So there was a lot of ego I had to like lay at the door and just realize I don't know anything. And that, I was enrolled in a program at UNCG it helps you get to PA schools or med schools or wherever you want to go. They set you up in a track. And I just remember being in a class like freshman. I'm like 25, I think 26. And I was like, Jesus, what am I doing, man? Like, this just feels weird. This is middle of a pandemic, so they feel just as weird. But, I just had to lay it aside. And I have an awesome professor for taking genetics and a microbiology class. And this professor just doesn't care. He's just like, you need to ask questions no matter what your educational level is. And so he is all about just kind of rejecting ego and, your pride and leaving it at the door. And it's just been really helpful. Yeah, it really is refreshing, because I do feel like, and this is kind of maybe backtracking a little bit what we talked and connecting dots, but I felt like at Southeastern, I felt like I had the burden of the world. Like I had to have an answer, to what the culture was saying, like in a well thought out, well structured answer, no matter what it was, politics, religion, sociology, whatever. And I just got, I think recently, like this year, and kind of living in the sciences world of just saying like, man, you know what? Just don't know. I just don't know. Like there's only certain things I care about, and that's all in what I'm going to care about. Like, and so having an answer, I just don't have that weight anymore. It's very freeing to me. But yeah, so I know that's kind of a messy answer, but
No.
but yeah, going back to school to do more school. It's just, you feel like an endless cycle of school, but I just keep that, I just keep the goal in mind that what I want to do is help people live better lives, no matter if they want to be healthy or live unhealthy lives and want to live on medications for the rest of their life. I don't mind doing that as long as they're able to live a somewhat better of a life at the end of the day. That's what I care about. So, yeah.
No, man. I mean, as long as, I mean, the thing is like, what I admire about you, Ben, is that you are always hopeful of, you always is like, we can work through this, we can come up with something, like we can come up with a game plan and you can be grounded about it. And because even with you, it's kind of like, that's so big to go back. Because I know so many people, we know people who, with their degree, decided to stay in ministry because that's what they know and they hate it.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes a big person to be like, I think I just need to start over.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, that's a lot of people wish they could make that decision that you made.
I mean, and just to encourage people who, if they want to make that decision, like, you're not alone. Like, I met plenty of people, who are in the exact situation, if not worse than I was, like feeling like they're behind, they're married, they feel old, but they're like, and we just kind of leaned on each other in some ways, but like, you're not alone in that community. Like, there are a lot of people in the same situation, but a lot of times kind of the echo chambers we all live in is, you just see a lot of what people put on Instagram or on Facebook or whatever, and you see like all these highlight reels, and it truly is the highlight reel. The people who are grinding it out a lot of times aren't really that consumed.
Yeah, they can't.
They're not. Yeah, they really can't. And so yeah, I'll leave it there. But yeah.
Oh, bro, that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
But dude, what is thinking back to old Ben 2013, 2012, is there anything you would say to that Ben?
Man, that's like an HR question they hit you with when you're training.
You gotta sit there and look at each other.
Yeah, you have to go around in a circle and
like, oh no, I gotta come up with
answer.
something.
Like, oh no, I don't want to answer. I would say that mystery's okay. Living in the tension, living in the mystery is okay, and that there truly is hope. Because as much as I do try to be hopeful, I think internally sometimes I feel like there's not a lot in some ways. And so I just think to just hold on that there's hope in the world, there's beauty in the world. You gotta find it. You gotta find it. And I just, because I mean, undergrad wasn't all cookie cutter, personally, spiritually, or anything like that. So I just think, and just be open to new stuff, and just to leave all you might have learned this and that, but to leave all the things you thought you knew just at the door, and just to be open. Yeah. I think that's something I would tell 2012 Ben, 2013 Ben. A little too sure of himself, I think. So.
Now, but the thing, you still go to church, right?
Yeah, we go to, well, I think proximity's sake, we used to go to a church called Two Cities in Winston. It was a summit, out of the Summit Network. We didn't really jive with it. Callie and I are working. My wife and I are working through a lot of we worked through a lot of spiritual stuff, and we were just like, I don't think this works for us. This is too much like what we came from, and I feel like we're just going to a startup. I'm going to a startup company every day, and I need to be somewhere different. And we actually just recently started going back to church at a place called Meadowview Presbyterian. So they're a Presbyterian church, but it's just a bunch of people above, pretty much 75% of the congregation is like above 60. But it seems like a special place, man. So it's good for us. And it's close to where we live too. So that's helpful. Yeah. We still go to church.
That's crazy, man. Because I mean, I feel like that would be such a damning thing to say you know, almost 10 years ago. Like I'm going to a Presbyterian church right now. And they have
Yeah.
like, but I mean, it's working out. Like, I mean, you're still
Yeah,
Christian,
I
you're
would
still of
say,
the faith.
and I think a lot of, I think there's still a lot of kinks to work out. I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, just because you get a theology degree or philosophy degree it still doesn't mean you don't deal with the simple theological or philosophical questions that lay people literally just deal with. So the same ones that trip me up are the same ones that trip up other people are tripping me up. And so, I think it's a slow work. I just remain hopeful because the fact that so this kind of descent of my faith in some ways and kind of building up of my faith, the descent took a while. It took years, right? So it took a while for me to kind of, if you want to use a trendy term, deconstruct it down to spare bones. And I think I'm just kind of in the repair phase where I'm just taking like a nail and like nailing one piece of wood to the wall. And I'm like, okay, I guess that sticks. It's just very slow and gradual. And I'm hopeful that changes, but yeah, I wouldn't say it doesn't come without its quirks. It's easy to be critical. Once you see how the sausage is made, like at an institution, it's hard for you to break from that mold. So when I went to two cities, I just saw levers. I just saw a bunch of in the beautiful mind when it's just like a bunch of equations. That's what I saw because I've seen this. We've seen the song and dance. I get the intro. The music, and then the guy comes out and talks about giving money, about how you should give, and then we're doing this and that, and then there's this then you kind of wait and you pray, and then this guy comes out on stage, and it's just all centered around that. And I guess just in a good way, I was like, is this just the way to do it? Like, is this what it's about? Like, what I'm missing something? Like, I'm not being fed here. I'm just way too critical. So honestly, just took a break. Just took a break from church. I didn't go consistently or our family didn't go consistently for a while. So we're still kind of repairing on the upswing, I think.
Yeah. So. Oh man. I mean, I think you are a great person to have on here and for people to hear, because not only have I seen you just throughout the years get to this point, but I just remember how, say, critical you were, and just how you can change your mind and just flip and be like, yo, I can change my mind. I can grow into a new person. I can be less hot-headed. I can be less, and seeing you up close more so showed me kind of a little bit what maturity looks like, and that it can happen. Or even the person next to me, this guy's hopeless. I don't know. But then with time, it's it could work itself out. Maybe you don't have all the answers right now, but you could be in a good place years from now.
Yeah, and it is that whole was that you become 1% better every day. It's so cliche, but it really is and I mean, I'm not saying that I'm 1% better every day. That's not what I'm saying, but I feel like it is a steady climb because, there is that friction between, like we said, going to school to go back to more school to hopefully be a PA. It's kind of man, I'm burning time. I'm going to be 30. I'm not averse. Callie and I talked about a lot. I'm going to be 30, 31 when I'm out of PA school. I mean, that's still technically young, but a lot of people are PAs, by 24 or 26, it's kind of, but I just think I think was it Joe Rogan talked about, he was he's like, man, you can say you wish you did this whenever you were younger, but you didn't. So all you got is today. So if you want to make the change, it is truly possible. But it comes with just setting things aside. So or just be willing to kind of just be, it's just going to be tough. Cause Callie's in nursing school right now. So, I mean, we got a whole lot of stakes in the fire, and she graduates in December, but that journey wasn't easy. It's not easy by any means to change. But I think the one thing is just to kind of one thing I've had to learn a lot is just setting down the pride thing and just saying, if you want to make a change, if you want to do anything in life to change, it's going to take, removing that ego, that big ego, because everyone has it. That's what holds everyone back from doing something that they want to do, is an ego. So, yeah.
But no, man, I appreciate you coming on here and doing this, dog.
Yeah, man. This. We didn't, man, we got, I mean, before we close that, we got to talk about this one thing at Southeastern. I can't let this go because it was one of my favorite things that ever happened at Southeastern.
Okay.
And it's not a bad thing, but it is just objectively hilarious. And I think it should be like in a Larry David film or whatnot, just something. So I think it was 2012. We're all freshmen. And I just remember being told, hey man, there's going to be a party down at the Ledford Center. I was like, dude, it's a party. Let's go. Like, we strobe lights. Like, man, it's going to be a toga party. And I was like, man, I'm so excited. Let's go. And I just remember being told, like, it's a toga party, but it's a Yoo-hoo toga party. And I just remember like laughing, because I remember my friend group in high school, and this is, I feel like, where we got along a lot, was we both were public school like children through and through, music, whatever it was. We were public school, like born and bred. I just remember, like, Yoo-hoo party. What are we talking about? I didn't go. I don't know if I couldn't go or didn't want to go. But I just remember seeing a video or picture of just people in these toga robes, drinking, chugging Yoo-hoos, and like people throwing up. Because they drank too much Yoo-hoo. I just remember thinking, oh my God, this is different.
I didn't go. And I just remember an RA coming back wearing the yoga thing. I said, what kind of white people shit is this? I was like, what is this, bro? To drink chocolate milk. It's chocolate water. And I'm like, this is school sanctioned? I was like, what is this? And just people just throwing up on each other. All this lactose going around. And I was like, yo. And I was like, okay, all right, I guess I'm here. I guess meanwhile, our other friends are actually going to parties, actually doing stuff.
Yeah, I just remember just thinking, like, man, if someone asked me, like, man, you don't need any parties, but yeah, man, there's this intense Yoo-hoo party. Yeah, I just remember that. You're like, yeah, I'm not going to tell anybody that. We're not disclosing that. Yeah, I mean, they're like most of my experience kind of seemed to be very just observation, like cultural stuff, like just seeing how people act. Oh my gosh, that was just perfect, man. I don't know. I don't know if it was our graduating class, but it just seemed like we had the best people that were just objectively just hilarious, but they were just serious, and I just loved it.
There was a lot of characters in our class, because you remember Steven, who like went to India and he worked at Jabal. Do you remember? I don't know what he's up to. I don't remember, but
it's like Ireland or something. Like, it's so crazy. Yeah.
But I think he like slept in a box in his dorm to like connect with the people of India.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Because I think I remember that, and I just remember our boy Hunter Ruth. He was the man. He's awesome. I love that guy. I just remember him shredding. He just had a guitar, and he's like this,
like, he was good,
super niche metal shredder guy. I don't know, but just so good. And I would just hear him crank his amp up and just shred for 10 minutes straight. And I was like, what are you doing here? Like that. And I was like, what? Like,
because it was that, because I remember, because we had a coffee house.
Dude.
And they had people perform, and he did, but it was like a cool like lounge
Yeah.
jazzy type thing that he was doing.
Yeah, they wouldn't let him play his other stuff or be a theatrical. He had to like meet with someone to ensure that he wouldn't play certain
Oh, dude.
stuff. Do you remember? Because I remember that. I remember talking to him about it. And yeah, he had to like, I don't know if he had to, I don't think he signed anything, but he had to like talk to him about like, hey, where are you going to play? Like, it's going to be kind of like, he can't be just like smoke and just like shirtless and shredding, you know, the whole time. But
trying to cage the lion, bro.
Yeah.
Dude, we had because it was the guy that had, I think he played like tuba or something, and he had like a llama hat.
Oh yeah, he lived right next to
That's talking about some, oh yeah.
yeah. I remember he was a pretty cool guy, but yeah, he was a part of the Southeastern band, which you know weren't you a part of the band?
So
like choir or something?
Dude, I was voted most musical.
Yeah.
That killed it for me. I killed it for me. I was in that music class freshman year, and I said they hate music. Ben, they hate this. Because he said, well, the professor said that the words were more important than the music.
Ooh, yeah, that yeah.
So the music sucked ass, and it was terrible. And you come in, you play 3 notes and some chord progression, and people thought they were so good. And I was like, yo, my high school band was better than this, yo. Then like this freshman, and so after that, I said, I don't want any parts to do with this. You guys hate music. I hate Christianity. I hate evangelical. I hate what you guys did to it. I hate everything. I was like, yo, I almost became a music major, and they killed it. They squashed it, bro.
Yeah, I feel like that was one of the things that we really connected on a lot was like music and stuff, because we were like, man, like I remember us asking multiple times, like, why does Kanye get to make the best music? Like, why don't Christians make the best music?
Why do Christians hate Kanye? Dude, the Christians I remember hate Kanye.
Now they love it.
My God.
We can get in. I mean, we don't have to get into that, but I mean, that's the whole.
Bro,
when it comes to Christian,
when I showed up, they hated Pokemon. They hated freaking Kanye.
Yeah,
Now
love Mumford and Sons.
Now all of a sudden they want to go outside and play Pokemon Go. Now it's okay. Now Jesus is Lord. Therefore,
yeah.
It's like, bro, if you didn't listen to Life of Pablo and Jesus, you don't get to sing these songs.
Bro, yeah, don't talk to me. Yeah, because it was like, I remember that being a thing. I remember that's the only thing like I held like from high school that I knew. Because like for some reason, this youth pastor I had, he was like, "Man, do you listen to Mumford and Sons?" I was like, "Nah, man." And this was when Mumford and Sons
was huge.
Dude, I mean, looking back on it now, Mumford and Sons changed the whole music trajectory. Like, I think that we'll look back on in like 20 years, like, oh my God, like they changed it drastically, along with other people. But I remember listening to them like, dude, this is awesome. Like, this is some God-breathed stuff. even though they're not necessarily Christians, like this is really good.
Not the God-breathed.
And then I listened to Damian Rice. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so good. I remember that's the one thing I came into Southeastern holding tight. That still hold tight. I'm like, man, like music is good. And if we don't connect there, I don't think we can be friends. Like if you tell me I don't listen to music and don't like it, or I don't like, the outros to Kanye albums, then we just can't be friends.
Then I had people ask me and question me, like in school, real Christians, our neighbors, ask me the value of music in the world.
Yeah,
they said,
that's even a question.
Do we really need it?
Yeah,
this was a serious, unironic question proposed to me. Like, we could probably do without it, right? I was like, what? Who are we talking? Like, what?
It'd be like super sad world. Dude,
I'm like, what are we talking about?
Yeah, I'm more so like, I remember trying to explain. Now, there's some songs and albums, whether it's a hip hop artist or whatever, where it's like, they're like, show me, the theme you're talking about in this. I was like, well, that artist is Future, and I don't listen to Future to understand about, God in the world. He has his place, and it's usually when I'm in the gym. that's usually Future's place. But you listen to people either, be Kendrick Lamar, you listen, I mean, even just, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like, Mumford and Sons or whatever, whoever like that, who actually, they put a lot of thought into the structures of their albums, Kanye or whoever, whatever, there is such value there. Once you get over the initial shock of everything and you just look at it as a human perspective, like, oh, this guy's going through this, this is the theme he's talking about. I just found that super valuable and I just resonated with it. I mean, that's the, what was it? The heroic story, the heroic arc.
The hero,
that's
just
hero's story. Hero's journey. But yeah, so, and it was just, I found that being like something I just didn't bring up a whole lot of times, because it was a point of questioning. You might be like, why do you listen to that? It's like, okay, sorry, I like The Chronic by Dr. Dre. It's just objectively good.
But it was one thing to listen to Snoop. It was one thing to listen to Eminem, but it touched a nerve when you were listening to Kanye West.
Yes.
And I never understood it until I looked at it from like a race perspective of what he did to Taylor Swift. And I think just predominantly white place, they particularly hated Kanye. So if you were listening to that or playing Yeezus, Black Skinhead, whatever he's got going on, as like, this is not okay, Ben, to be listening to this. I was like, bro.
I mean, I remember when the song was it off Yeezus, I Am a God came out.
Ooh,
and
know,
it's a great song. He's not claiming to be, he's not claiming to be Yahweh.
You can't.
And I think that's the part where and that's the part where I feel like a lot of, and thankfully now, in some ways, there are some people within evangelical circles who are saying, hey, like, you got to kind of get past the shock value and then like look at the themes. I don't think it's as frequent as I think, it would be necessary to make any sort of change, but it is something that, like, I don't know, I enjoy it because, like, my main thing with Christianity was like, if you believe it as true, and I still hold this, like, if you believe it as true and you hold it as true, then it's got to be steeped into everything. You've got if you firmly believe that Christianity deals with the human experience, then the arts and how it's, manifested, people's trials and tribulations, it shouldn't be, you shouldn't be doing, you shouldn't be the judge and jury whenever you listen to an album of saying, oh my gosh, like, that's just offensive, that's sinful. Like, it just really irked me, because I'm like, no, what you need to be thinking is, man, you're listening to someone like actually voicing maybe an internal struggle or pain or, like.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the lack of empathy.
It really is the empathy thing. And I think it really does come to that. I think a lot of the issues with evangelicalism does come with a lack of perspective and empathy. Empathy is huge. And I really wish there was more there, especially in the arts, man. Like discrediting, like, quote unquote, postmodern art for being crazy and hectic without like stepping back. I remember that whole spiel and was it Christian philosophy about, postmodern art is just not good. There's nothing there. I'm like, no, a human made this. Like the human experience is in this. It's just different. So
yeah, bro. I'm sure
I wish that would change.
You're the 1%. Because you're like the only one who actually cares. Like, bro, there's something valuable to this. And they're like, yeah, whatever.
And I think that's something I just learned to kind of check at the door in some ways. I don't know. Like, I know not a lot of people are going to agree with that, especially in evangelicalism or whatever.
Yeah,
and I think that's okay. But if you start saying, "Oh, well, this is wrong and this is sinful," that's where I'll put the dukes up and we can talk about it. But yeah, I think it just letting it go in some ways, but I still like poking fun at it though. It's still funny because evangelicals be culturally irrelevant until they start figuring that out. Culturally irrelevant, and that if you're complaining about Kanye now and not looking at other people, you're already 5 years behind. Like, on what you're responding to. So
like
just, that.
Do you remember when I took a modern philosophy, but I made the connection because I was writing a book. I was writing an article on fundamentalism, and I was buying all these books and research on fundamentalism and how evangelicalism came from it.
Yeah.
And
it
was just how anti-intellectual, and they didn't want to hear shit from nobody. And that's when they started doing these kind of sectarian, like we have our own colleges, we have our own schools, we have our own hospitals, and we're gonna live life on a hill. And because the fundamentalists, like early 1900s, came from just the Puritans.
Yeah.
So it goes Puritans, fundamentalists, evangelicals. Like you guys are related. This is a lineage. And that was when I looked at it and I said, I'm on this ship and I don't know where it's going. Because I didn't like where we came from. And I'm like, where are we going? And I said, yo, I think we might have to get off this ship, yo.
Yeah, I think whenever you told me that, I think I stuck my head in the sand because I just didn't want to hear that. I was like, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear this. I don't know what to do with this yet. I don't know what to do with this. I'm just going to stick my head in the sand. But no, you're right. It's so true. It's so true.
But because it was also just, when it came to art and music and the human experience. I mean, this is a very Puritan view when you find people on campus or in your church taking these views. And dude, I was gonna show it. I was looking at it. I have what was the little book we had? It was like a little gospel primer with poems that everyone had.
By Milton Vincent. The gospel primer. Yeah.
The gospel primer, bro. Like we still 2013, 14, we're carrying these around like it's the Constitution.
Yeah, that literally was the two. If you went to seminary between the years of 2012 and 2015, that was probably on your bookshelf. Like
oh, bro,
yeah,
pull that thing out. I got it on me.
Yeah, and in some ways, I kind of wonder, being like that type of seriousness from the Puritans, from that, all of that, I don't know if it's does more harm than good in some ways. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder, like, if you think about, like, it just seems to make sense to me. Like, if you tell yourself, oh, I'm a wretched sinner, it's like, that's all you're going to think about yourself. And I don't know if that's the most healthy place. And I think there's people like raising red flags, but I wish, and selfishly, I wish those flags were raised when we were going through school. So I could think like, man, like what you believe is grace. Like that is objectively what you believe about Christianity, is that it is that you are given grace, but you are 100% not graceful with yourself. And I think that was the thing that, I don't know if it was intentionally or unintentionally with the culture at Southeastern, and maybe just in evangelical churches as a whole, was there's not a whole lot of grace with yourself. And it's like, dude, like you're going to make mistakes. And what you need to understand is that it's okay. It's not like, it's not, but you don't dismiss it, but like, you got to be gracious with yourself too, and I think that was the thing I just missed out on. And I remember writing in a journal like a month ago, have I just missed the whole point? Or like, have I for years on end just missed it and just not realized like this is just what it's centered on? Like I said, it was centered on, but I definitely didn't act like it. I was more hard on myself than I think God is. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
Just,
Well, I think it's also, you're telling someone, hey, you're not being graceful with yourself. Well, it's like for that person, it could produce more shame. Because it's like you get into these mental spaces, and we saw it on campus, we saw it in people where it's like any inkling, or I didn't trust in God enough for his provision, and it's just so much shame.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, how much shame did we see in people? Because it's like they were okay 1 minute and then they had some terrible thought that it's almost like me thinking this put the nails in Christ's hand and it just twisted it. And people just live like that.
Yeah. I just remember days being ruined because of like, man, I confronted something, or like I was dealing with something. And I just like, man, I don't think this is like, I know this is what I'm doing, but I think looking back on it now, I'm like, man, like just be gracious. Like, and I don't know. I don't think it was unintentional, kind of the shame that was induced, because I don't know if anyone knew any better that how we approached, dealing with sin or however you want to phrase it. But it was just, I don't think it was the most healthy way. I'll say that. I'll say that. It felt like a whole lot of law and not a whole lot of grace. Like, here's this card, write your scriptures down and check it off and report back to me and let me know how you did. And that is just the law. I don't know a whole lot about the law and gospel dichotomy. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if other people are that familiar with it, but like looking back on it now, it's like, that is just the law kind of cloaked in a little bit of grace. And it was not helpful because it was the law, because it was just damning. It just made me feel, man, I'm so small. God's so big. I'm so small. I'm insignificant. And I think it just spilled over to the type of work or how I viewed like having a career or a professional life is that, oh, I'm not that significant. I'm small. Yeah. And it's like, no, like, I think that's just I just think it's a slippery slope. Like, it just keeps like, once you buy into that, I just feel like it goes into a lot of different areas of life that are unhealthy. Well, that's why a lot of people end up in therapy. But
yeah, like it was, so I think we were mirroring theology from these kind of like evangelical rock stars who lean super on Puritan thinking and Puritan thinkers. So everyone's going back to like primary text and they start mirroring these things. Yeah. And you end up bumping into this problem. But do you think, I think that kind of thinking, kind of Edwardian kind of thing, I think that also produces just mental illness. Because that anxiety, and if you allow it to continue, and especially you're looking around and you're thinking you're correct and accepting the shame. I mean, there are plenty of people like my in the senior thesis class I took, I realized as I looked through, I was the only one, like everyone was in therapy or they legitimately had like a clinical like issue. Like they had depression, they were bipolar, they had something going on. But I was like, this is 95% of the class. This is not normal. And we're at like a Bible college, people who live in grace, live in freedom and all that.
Yeah.
Do you think some of that theology kind of took on or brought out mental illness?
I mean, I think in part that's kind of what I was trying to say. I think before it was like, I think in some ways the theology, I think it just, I'm not saying like, professors or pastors missed the point of the gospel. I just think it was the offspring. For some reason, I just think it was the tertiary like people, just like the church members, how it all works out in evangelical culture that kind of produced this unhealthiness in some ways. And then I think just kind of leads to mental illness. Something's missing because like someone who believes, I don't know, I think someone who, I don't think if a theology is true should drive someone into like a mental despair. Not to say that there's something else there, something else going on and someone needs to go to therapy. That's fine. But I'm saying like a theology shouldn't send you into depression. You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't make much sense in my head. So if that's the main reason it is, I think there might be other factors, but I don't think the theology should make you do that. If so, I would question it. And I think that's the part I've kind of gotten to is where I'm like, I don't know what we've missed in our application of the gospel or grace, but if it leads to doing more or to law or to, trying to do something to accomplish more, one, that seems very, I don't know if it's very Western and very capitalistic to do more, to produce more, but it's the opposite of what we say we're saved from. If you believe in grace, it's the saving from the works. It's not to induce you to do more works. And to the 2 or 3 Lutherans that were on our campus, Timothy, Evan, and I forget who else, maybe I think Tyler
Suggs.
Suggs or whatever.
Suggs, yeah.
They were really in tune with that.
Oh, they were.
You know, very in tune with it. And it seemed to be very freeing for them. You know, and in part I'm envious of that. You know, but yeah, I do think there's something of some theologies that do
Why
could land someone in therapy.
Yeah.
Be honest.
Yeah. Well, I remember when we took that Edwards class, and the best class on campus.
It was labeled as a philosophy class, I think, but it was divorce. It was like
Jesus.
It was bad.
It was everything I did not want it to be, and that's what it was.
Yeah.
But the one thing I remember, well, two, they didn't talk about slavery. And two,
we tried. We even tried to mention that. We tried.
Yeah, and then they were like, "Yeah, you don't want to talk about it."
Yeah.
I remember him talking about the Jeremiads, and he said that Edwards and the congregation would have these Jeremiads, or these sermons, like God's wrath is going to come down if the village, the settlement, doesn't, be holy, get their stuff together, and stop sinning, or God's wrath would come down, aka the Native Americans would come and pillage our settlement, like our place. And this is what they would do. And so if someone, me or you, like imagine being back then and doing our best and living in this mind, and Christ, like, I hope you don't see that thought, or remove me, and you're just going through the verses, and then someone gets kidnapped. And it's just like someone in the camp did something wrong because this happened.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I just remember the psychological torture these people had to be going through.
Witch hunts.
And I was like, and I just saw the same thing, or like variations of it on campus. Like, you must be doing something wrong.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think I remember this was such a stupid thing to say, but yeah, it's been long ago and I've made peace with it. But I remember one time someone came up to me, dude, it is honestly so sad. I'll even say this to somebody. I remember someone came up to me. I was in the gym. I was like on the elliptical, whenever I thought ellipticals were good for fitness, just was on there doing some elliptical stuff. Yeah. And the guy came up to me and said, "Yeah, hey, how you doing, man?" I was like, "I'm doing well." And he said, "So-and-so is really just kind of," or I asked about a certain individual, and they're like, "Oh, they're doing okay. They're kind of going through this and that." And I just remember saying, this is such an idiot, saying like, "Man, is there any like sin in his life that he's dealing with?" And it was like a mental health thing.
Yeah.
I remember asking that. And I felt 100% justified in asking that. Because in my experience, I was on a spiritual high, and God was revealing himself to me. Not revealing himself, but really helping me through a troubling time. I was memorizing scripture. I was in his word every day, praying. So I thought the appropriate thing to say would be like, "Is there any unknown sin in his life?" That's the wrong thing to say 10 times out of 10, most of the time. Like I mean, honestly, I just remember being like, what? Where'd that come from? Thinking about it now, I'm like, where did that come from? I don't know where I can put my finger on it necessarily. In some ways, I don't know if there's any one thing to blame, but
do you think that's that tone, that attitude, that whatever position you think you're in, that was celebrated? If you were in leadership and you ask that to someone, what's wrong with that? Is there some sin in your life?
And I think that's where you see these pastors fall, right? You see these pastors do bad things, and that's what makes it such a fall.
Yeah.
Whenever you think that the pastor on stage, is doing such great things. I just remember people gawking over pastors about how they read the Bible so much and prayed so much and did all these great things. And I'm like, thinking back on it now, I'm like, I don't think that matters, because that's not, we're not stacking up these awards.
Yeah.
and I think it just, it is celebrated, unfortunately, hopefully not more now. I mean, the circle I'm in now is just so
Yeah,
kind
it's
of,
so different. Yeah.
it's just different, but it just seems, that it makes for a greater fall from these leaders. It's unnecessary. Like if we had a proper view, and I think that's what Anthony Bradley talked about was, what is it? A correct anthropology. Like we don't understand what it is to be human. We don't get it. SBC people or evangelicals, we just don't get it.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it was so, because I was steeped in that, because I was saying crazy shit like that to other people until I felt guilty, because I was like, what am I doing? Because eventually I looked at myself and I said, is Paul Washer doing this to me? Is John Piper doing this to me? Like, what is it that's making me toxic? Because I wasn't like this when I showed up, but I jumped into the culture and I got to catch up. And all of a sudden, when I start getting the wheels turning, I start looking at other people like that. Like, hey, like, look, if there's some sin, you just need to say that. Like, that's so crazy to say.
It is really insane. Maybe insane is too harsh of a word. It seems a little bit wild to have the audacity to say something like that to someone. And that's not to say, like, could there be? Yes. I mean, if we want to,
who's to know what God's judgment in their life is?
But yes, that was the thing. It was that somehow we can pinpoint God's judgment. And so I think whenever, you discovered the whole Puritan thing, it definitely puts a piece of the puzzle together where you're like, I don't know how to gauge God's judgment. I don't know if people in scriptures know how to gauge God's judgment. I really don't know. I mean, truly, but it just seems very arrogant. And like we said, doesn't have a lot of empathy behind it. Normally, if you say, man, what sin do you have going on in your life? That's not normally backed by empathy. I mean,
it's just, I need something to use against you. I need some leverage. Tell me. Then you deal with that.
Because sometimes it would turn into, well, here's what I do to do this. And that's not counseling. That is not how you counsel somebody. I don't know of one counselor who would say, like, oh, well, here's what I do. No. It's not some ego trip. Yeah. It's not an ego thing. But yeah. Yeah. So hopefully that's behind me.
Well, at least I got out. I left. I stopped going to church when Trump. Yeah. Because right when he got elected, like the next year I left. But then there was a big thing. So I was kind of watching from afar, like the SBC dealing with confronting themselves on, or like what they got going on against Russell Moore and like what they've been doing. That's and sad. Just like, I don't know, isolating people, and then just like it became more of a mess when I left. And so I'm like, dude, we can't get just public politics right. If we can't get, anthropology, what is a person? Why are you treating them so bad if they're made in the image of God and all that? Yeah. And it's like, well, okay, where are we coming from? And I look down there and I just see these Jeremiahs and people just, I just see poor mental health in people, because I've been connecting with people and they had to go to therapy after going to this kind of institution. And I mean, I asked myself, I was like, do I need to go to therapy? There was a lot of self-development stuff that I did, but it just seems that when you're exposed to these ideas and this kind of theology, it's like you have to rewire yourself after leaving the bubble.
There is because it's like, I was talking to my dad the other day and he was talking to me, he asked about my undergrad and we were chatting about it, and I told him, I was like, there's like a reworking you have to do whenever you leave the bubble, or as it's commonly called, the bubble. But it's like, but also like, it's like going to church camp for 4 years. Like if you go to college there, like it's kind of structured in that way. Luckily, I kind of kept my wife worked a lot. or my girlfriend at the time, worked a whole bunch, and I worked a whole bunch. And I just hung out with my close knit of friends, and I was like, me and you and a couple others were just very kind of normal. Like it wasn't, we tried not to get too steeped into it, it seemed like, or we always had one, we're like, there's more to the world. There's more to the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was talking to him about it. And I was like, or talking to my dad. I was like, there's just like this piecing together you have to do that when you go to church camp forever and you leave it and you just don't. And they kind of want, what's great, what's so bizarre to me is that they, looking back on it now, is they kind of warn you of that when you first come, right? You first come to Southeastern, you first come there. They tell you about that. And everyone just kind of shrugs it off, like, I won't be that. And then it's like 95% of the people end up like, I don't know, or not 95, that's not charitable, but like, let's say 50-50, like end up being like, which I think is a fair amount, like of people who are just like, I don't know at the end of it, what's going on in the world. And
we also have to be chosen for a job.
Yeah. And you're not marketable.
So you're incentivized to be this way.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, I'm hopeful that getting over my optimism, hopeful that some of it changes, but I mean, then again, I just don't know, but
yeah, man. It's just, I mean, all that stuff used to keep me up at night. All that stuff used to just make me depressed. And I mean, that's why I'm getting into contact people now and be like, yo, like, what are you doing now? Because I remember you and it was not good. It was not good back then.
There are some people who, I'm just saying there are some people who have definitely some interesting stories, like especially the some you've already done, like a Sam, James, Lauren, Newkirk, and who else? Who's the other person? I'm trying to think.
That might have been.
But
I did one more
like their stories are unique and valuable, because like that is something that I can't even fathom. Like some of those stories are just like extremely hurtful, like that I was like, I'm just saddened that you had to go through that. Like that just really saddens me in some ways, that people or felt the need to act a certain way. And then it, like what's crazy in my mind is that then affects them, like seems like for the better for them, like in some ways, but affects them and could have potentially damaged like their future a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like their experiences. And it makes me think about it, like, with all this stuff coming up about, people being hurt by the church. And it affects people for a very, very long time. When you're hurt by something that is tied to like a religious, institution or church or something like that, people will get damaged and jaded for a very, very long time.
Well, but it's crazy because I bump into people. Like I bump into random people. Like I went to a CrossFit gym here in my hometown, and it just came up in conversation. They're like, yeah, I was trying out this little podcast, and this girl said that she did it was something like crew at like big university. But she went on like a mission trip, and she said, I'll never get involved with this kind of stuff. I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, like I used to go to church. I used to be super gung-ho, but I got kind of the same language. Like I saw how the sausage was made.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm not interested in that stuff whatsoever. But when I mentioned it, she got excited because she was like, what? Like you have like other people? Because it's kind of hard to talk about. If you're not seeing that culture, if you haven't in a way almost like been abused by that culture, it's very hard to talk about it or get people to understand. Because I mean, that's why I wanted to make something like this. So it's like you can connect with someone like, no, I've seen what you've seen, and it's not okay.
Yeah, I remember sitting across, like I was having breakfast with a person at the super nice guy and a guy I went to church with at the Two Cities Church, and sitting across from him and and this was of no fault of his own, but I was trying to explain to him like some of the stuff I saw at small groups and stuff I saw at churches and my main hangups with this church that we were going to and stuff like that. And because here was the thing that just like jaded me, and this was so minor, but it just brought back all those like observations I made in college, working with it, going to different churches, hanging out with people who all believe the same stuff, is I wanted to volunteer for the welcome tent at our church. Because I was like, I would want to go meet new people coming. I'd love to get them to sign a form. I do that at my job. Like, I'm good at that. I was working that front desk gig. I was like, I'm really good at that. So I'll just use my skills that I have to the glory of the Lord and serve him this way and do this. And I remember getting an email from the volunteer staff person, whatever, saying, this role is a majority women's role at our church. And we just don't allow or don't want men to work at the welcome tent. And I just remember, and this, that's so small in like the grand scheme of other people's, huge spiritual trauma that they've experienced. But I was like, are you serious? Like, I can't greet people like because I'm with other women. Like, I'm secure in my marriage. My wife and I worked on that, and we are secure with one another. Like, I just want to shake hands, kiss babies, and sign people up for church. And I didn't say that in the email. I just respectfully declined, respectfully said, okay, where are some other spots? Though I wanted to say a lot of different stuff. But I just remember trying to tell that to that person over breakfast. But I was filtering it through all of my other experiences. And he just like couldn't understand it. Because he just didn't have those like that experience. And so it is definitely, whenever you find someone who has experienced the same stuff, it's kind of like you light up. You're like, oh my God, like you get it too.
Yeah,
like
me too. Yeah.
You watch those, and I'm not comparing Southeastern to like a cult or anything, but watch those cult documentaries, and those people feel so alone once they get out of the cult, and then they realize like, oh, you went through something so similar, and they like open up and they start like freaking out. That's exactly kind of what it's like. Like,
bro, I see it all the time. Like, just
Yeah.
striking up conversation, and they're just like, "Oh, I went to Southeastern University. Oh, wait, like I know that place. That's a like Christian place." And like, oh yeah, like anywhere you have to mandatory like go to chapel, and like people like because they just forget it, and they're just like, dude, I just want to like block out that part of my life.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, man. Cause like even like I've met probably this year like 4 people just striking up conversation, and I found out they went to like a Christian school and had very similar type things. So it's common.
Yeah.
I mean, going to church is common, leaving church is common, maybe not being as thoughtful, but for the people that were thoughtful about it, it's like, they have to do something with that. And it's hard, especially if you don't know anyone who can even talk about it with you.
Right. And it is so true. I know like talking to my mom and dad about it because they just don't have the same experience I do. So it's like I talked to them about it and they're like, oh, okay. And it's just kind of like left at that because they just don't know. they just don't know, and that's okay. That's no fault of their own, but like it's it's definitely freeing and sometimes sad to hear other people's like perspectives, or it's always good to hear other people's perspectives, but like it's sad whenever you see someone who's been hurt, when it was so avoidable. I think that's the thing that gets me is when 100% X, Y, or Z could have been handled differently or done differently. Hindsight's always 20/20 in those situations, but it just makes you sad.
It's a trust, obviously, in leadership, but it's a trust in God. Yeah, and it's a trust in this is gonna work out, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in therapy. Like I got to talk about this because I don't know I'm just crying for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, there, hearing when you hear not necessarily people who's been on your podcast, but with other people who've experienced spiritual stuff, you sometimes don't blame them for saying I don't believe anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like it's really hard to come and say, oh, well, you should believe, and you hear what they've gone through, and you're like, oh, okay. If I went through that, I probably wouldn't either. We deal with that.
That's just so refreshing to hear. for a lot of people. Because again, like you know the feeling of being like, I can't say it because it's a sin to God, it's a sin to other people. But to be like, dude, I would do the same thing. I would never go back.
You know, and I think that I just really hope that a lot of believers, and speaking to myself, would be more like understanding of that fact. I think that's kind of where I think the downfall in some maybe churches or just Christians in general has been oh, I get it. Like if I was like that, I would act like that as well. You know, and I feel like that's probably the most loving thing you can say to someone, or, you know, one of the most loving things you can say to someone is just to say, man, I get it. And then just to, I don't know, just be a good human. I don't know how else to put it. Like just be a good person and just not to, I don't know, make people feel like trash. You know, just because they're sinful doesn't mean they be made to feel like trash.
I mean, doesn't it come back to, you know, love God, love neighbor?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that
is that it? That sums it up.
I think you know, talk about what you can do. That's about it. I mean, that's about the only thing you can do. You know, so I just fingers crossed and hope that, you know, you don't have to, that people, like, there aren't like a litany of people just hurt by the church at the end of the day, you know. So I don't know. That's kind of my hope and desire, but
I'll definitely do.
You know,
yeah, man. All right. I appreciate you coming on here and doing this for me.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, dude. I have to do this again. Talk about what's going on, culture, anything.
Yeah, we can, you know, I'm not trying to tell you what to do for your next podcast, but it'd be cool. We should go down the health podcast or a health rabbit hole. That's a whole different one.
That health talk. That health talk. I don't want to hear that.
Yeah. It's yeah. Health in the church. That's definitely something interesting to talk about. Yeah.
I do. All right, man. Well, I really appreciate you doing this. I'll definitely have to have you on.
Oh, man. Yeah, for sure, man. You take it easy.
All right, bro. Appreciate it.
All right. See you, homie.
See you, dude.